che non ne posso proprio più. St'inverno sembra che non debba finire mai.
Finirà, Dio, finirà.
Up until the 1940s, Italian cinema was mostly about adapting literary works in lavishly decorated sets that spoke to the upper middle class. But that was before the arrival of Roberto Rossellini. The Rome native instead turned the lens on the society's poor. With a cast of no-names, Rossellini transformed the camera into an invisible narrator to explore a different type of naturalism surrounding the hardships faced by the common man. His neo-realist style, as it came to be called, was unconventional and, at first, rejected. But it wasn't long before the visionary artist swept up awards at major film festivals like Cannes, gaining recognition for his films as early modern masterpieces and putting both him and the method on the international map. It also encouraged filmmakers from other countries to mimic the Rossellini style. It was in this kind of environment that the aspiring cartoonist Federico Fellini got his own break in the movie industry. He began working with the Italian realists in making allegories driven by melodrama. Yet his interest lied not with the real, but with the outrageous. And it wasn't long until he subverted the movement. A never-before-seen dissection of the bourgeoisie, executed with a surrealist touch, helped take Italian cinema to the next phase. His dream logic sequences and grand theatrical visuals brought the movie aesthetic closer to the comic books he grew up reading. Thanks to their operatic qualities, his films quickly found an eager audience back home. And like his predecessor Rossellini, Fellini also made his mark in foreign festival awards, helping him gain universal recognition.
Corri, disgraziato!
To speak about these two significant game changers of the Italian cinema industry, I'm joined by the CEO of Film London and the British Film Commission, Adrian Wootton. He is also the advisor on Italian films at the London Film Festival, as well as the programmer for the Venice Film Festival. Thank you so much for being with us today, Adrian. Now, what were the conditions that brought the Italian golden age of cinema to life?
Well, there were a variety of things in that post-war period. I think that, there was very little money. And actually, what happened was, I think that there were a bunch of young, very talented, creative people who were determined, led by people like Rossellini, to make films in a way no matter what, without having, big production budgets, without having access to large studios. They wanted to make things quickly and with energy that reflected contemporary reality. And I think that a group of people got together, and obviously, Rossellini and Fellini actually got his start working with Rossellini on Rossellini's famous Rome Open City. And that sort of inspired him, and he got to understand about the mechanics of filmmaking through Rossellini. And although Fellini's a radically different filmmaker, they were still inspired by that sense of wanting to do something and determined to do something, knowing they couldn't make Hollywood movies. They hadn't got that budget, they hadn't got that access. They had to try and carve something different out from themselves. And that sort of independent spirit, reflecting contemporary life, reflecting Italian culture, created the conditions where a whole new generation of filmmakers blossomed.
Well, you just mentioned Fellini's relationship with Rossellini. How did that help the evolution of the Italian cinema industry?
Well, Rossellini was an incredibly important figure because he brought that sense of filming. I mean, Rome Open City is absolutely, in a way, taking the techniques of documentary and putting them into a drama. Rossellini believed in authenticity and the real. He believed in doing it, literally putting it on the streets. And so his work had a kind of verite, grit and authenticity that really we'd never seen before in quite the same way in cinema in Europe and actually cinema, certainly cinema in Italy. And And Fellini saw that. He worked on Rome Open City. He also worked on Paisan as well to a certain extent. And it really inspired him. He began to understand the mechanics of filmmaking and realize how he could take Rossellini's kind of get up and go, gritty authenticity, and how he could actually then translate that into his own filmmaking, which was much more inspired by circus, carnival, his own dreams, literature, than it was just documentary.
Well, tell us about Rossellini's influence on other directors.
Rossellini had a massive influence, not just on Italian cinema, but on world cinema. Things like Rome Open City, and then him continuing with, you know, Stromboli and, you know, other films he made, even through to Journey to Italy. He created the conditions where the new wave of French cinema, the Nouvelle Vague, came in the 1960s. That spirit of energy, that spirit of independence, that spirit of doing things on a low budget with an authenticity and a realism. But he also inspired other generations of filmmakers. I mean, Martin Scorsese in American cinema talks about how profoundly important Rossellini's vision of the world, his vision of cinema was to the way in which his own filmmaking evolved. So I think that if you look at Rossellini, there's a whole, you know, lineage of Rossellini from the 1940s and 1950s that went on right through the 60s, the 70s and the 80s, and he remains an incredibly important influence on cinema even now.
What was it about Fellini's movies that made them so unique?
Well, Fellini, I think, you know, the fact that he was inspired by literature, he was inspired by art, he was inspired by Italian culture. He loved carnivals, he loved circuses, but also he was inspired by dreams. And he took all of these disparate elements and made a really, really unique brand of cinema. A brand of cinema which absolutely reflected Italian life, but was incredibly modern, incredibly contemporary, that was drawing on theories of psychology and psychology, but was drawing on literary theory, that was drawing on older art forms as well. And when you see a film, whether it's, you know, Ace and a Half or La Dolce Vita, he's absolutely at the cutting edge of what 1960s cinema was. He was creating a whole new mode of cinema. And when you look at you know, generations of filmmakers who grew up watching Fellini for new ideas, for new inspiration about creativity. And that lineage again continues with Fellini because, you know, frankly, you wouldn't have a filmmaker, an Italian filmmaker as important as Paolo Sorrentino with, you know, his Oscar-winning films like The Great Beauty, without Fellini. The influence is so clear and so palpable in the work of modern filmmakers, especially modern Italian filmmakers, as well as other international filmmakers.
In what way do they still have an effect on contemporary Italian cinema?
I think it's very, very clear that if you look at, you know, we're going through actually pretty much a golden age of new Italian cinema with the work of Matteo Garrone, you know, with his work like Gomorrah, with Paolo Sorrentino with The Great Beauty and Il Divo, and with other directors, Alba Roaca, Laura Bespuri, you can absolutely see in the way in which they each individually approach their own cinema and their own art, that influence of whether it's Fellini, the grotesque, the dream, dealing with contemporary Italian politics and life, or whether it's in the way they shoot, the gritty authenticity of some of their work, which is absolutely linked back to Rossellini. These men cast a huge shadow over world cinema, and their influence is still very, very clear and apparent in a powerful way in the Italian cinema of today.
Now, as we said earlier, you are the advisor for Italian films at the London Film Festival, yes, which will take place between the 10th and 21st of October. If you were to choose one out of the 8 films that are in the program that is a must-watch, which would it be?
They're all great films, but I have to say that for me, I would choose the very latest film from the director of Indivisibly, which is called The Vice of Hope, which I think is an incredibly powerful second feature showing on the last weekend of the festival, and shows this real flowering of new talent. But we've also got women directors. Laura Lucchetti's Twin Flower is also a beautiful new film from a young female director as well.
All right, Adrian, thank you so much for joining us on Showcase and, of course, speaking to us about Fellini and Rossellini.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.